Hi, welcome to our very first conversation on the Chaise. My two lovely friends, Crystal Woods and Jennifer Kennard, and I are just having a talk about the essay To Be First. So, if you haven't read that, there's a really special opportunity for you to scroll up a bit and check out my reading of that essay, or you can just read it in your inbox if you have it. And the most important thing about all of this is for you to take about 20 minutes or so. First, grab a cup of something wonderful and settle in and be a part of our conversation called To Be First. Having read the essay called To Be First, let's just kind of start with anything that resonated with you, a theme, a line that kind of got you thinking about this. So let's just take a few minutes to share. And whoever wants to go.
Well, I can start. I love how you covered the many different types of firsts to the really great ones, which I think we associate with a lot, like winning a medal or winning a competition, but then like the first time we're betrayed, or the first time we feel lost, or the first time something is forced upon us that we didn't look for, or we didn't want, and yet what the only thing, like you propose, that we can do is learn from it. And so I just really like how at first when I read To Be First, it seemed like it was going to be really narrow, and I was like, where is she going to go with this? But then as I read through it, it opened up into like this flower, and each petal was a different first, and it kind of made my life feel full and had me thinking about all the different firsts that I've had, and how I've navigated them and valued them. So it was just really great. It's a great way to like open up. For me, it was opening up my own life.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Crystal. I thought it was, I had the same thought when I started. I thought, okay, I can relate to this. I can relate to this idea of firsts and seeing people achieving firsts. And then, but again, that same question, where's it going? Like, where's she taking us? It felt like we're on a journey with you, and then you kind of guide us along to a place. So I really appreciated that. And I was underlining some things as I went through, and I noticed I was for the first several paragraphs underlining the last sentence of each paragraph, and I felt like each paragraph ended with something that I thought, oh, I want to think about that more. So, like, for instance, the first paragraph says, "First is a quest that orders all other priorities."
Wow.
I thought, oh, yeah, I need to think about that. Like, how does my desire for first affect my choices in life? How does my desire for other, people around me, their first, how does that affect my choices for them and their choices? So there's a lot to think about here.
Yeah.
I love that. I think for me, I'm not sure I knew where I was going either when I started that journey, but it did kind of unfold. I love that analogy of a flower. And I think the central thought for me, as I even like reread it again today, is just that line about what if we could remake first? Because I needed to kind of take stock, just like what you were saying, Jennifer, and think through what does first really mean to me. I think now when I'm thinking about way back when I started writing and playing with this idea, it was right when we had our new grandbaby, and I started to think about like being the first in on that, and what that meant. And then I started thinking, well, what kind of first is that?
in comparison to all the other different firsts, and where for me do the scales become unbalanced between kind of the first that we are trying to go for, and the first that are lasting in some way and become more rich and meaningful. So, yeah. Well, I'm jumping off a little bit of what you said, Jennifer, about thinking about choices, and I'm thinking about that line about priority of how we set priority or something like that about firsts. But it's leading me to one of our kind of an idea of one of the questions. I'm looking off to the side because I'm looking at it, about a way that maybe you have encouraged somebody to go for it, to go for first. That was maybe an encouragement or maybe a pressure, or maybe a way that you experienced that pressure to win or to achieve. That can come from a noble perspective, like I really want the best for this person, I really want the best for me, or could come from some other maybe slightly skewed view of first for you. So let's talk about that. Can you share a little bit about a time or a place in your life where you felt that?
I feel like it's something I'm encountering over and over again in parenting. Like I'm kind of learning how to, like maybe when to push and when to kind of step back a little bit. And I think also to look at my own motives. Like, am I kind of encouraging this child for their sake and for the sake of what God has for them? Or am I encouraging them because it's going to somehow make me look better or make our family look better? I feel like there's so much wrapped up into that. So I'm thinking of times like encouraging kids, like my son is getting ready to apply to colleges next year. And,
Wow.
and he's taking tests, and how does he prepare for those? And then how do we respond when he gets the results of those? I feel like this is a real area of growth and a test for me as a parent, and kind of training ground that God is ordering my priorities through it.
Wow. Can totally relate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I love how you talked about motives, because I think what this essay does and what we're learning in our own lives is like we have to be aware of what's driving us. And I think that this essay encompasses that so well, because all of a sudden we're having to like pick apart these different things. But I would agree with you that parenting was definitely like a place that I saw this drive in me, and it was a reflection upon me, and it was really rooted in what I believed my identity to be at that time. And I've grown in the Lord first and foremost, and then in who I am and who He's wired me to be, and that has lessened the drive that I was kind of putting out on myself and then everyone around me. And it's been great. But I know when I had an infant, my first kid, I always say like, that was probably the one that received the most damage, because I was
the guinea pig.
The guinea pig child, and perfectionism was such a huge part of feeling well with myself, being okay with me, was in putting out something really perfect. And so I remember reading the baby book, and it was like, 5 months old, there are some kids that can sit up. Well, Shelby, today's the day you're going to learn to sit up. and
You're doing that.
Yeah. And she did it. I mean, she was capable of it. But then, I had more than one child, and I saw that, hey, they're not all like this, and they all had different quirks just like me, and different abilities and ways they excelled and were first. And then in other areas where that really wasn't even on their radar, it wasn't who they were, and it didn't need to be. And in our last child, who has pretty significant special needs, I had to actually let go of all of those, those firsts that I thought were needed, and really evaluate then what is being required of me in this time and where is that coming from. And it really is, it's been a huge growth in me personally, of just even giving myself a break and saying that there's more to this being first. And I love how Kim talks about that. I like how you talk about that, Kim, where you are beginning to then pose the idea that, like, can we be first in something else? Like first to observe, first to give a positive word, first to pray for somebody, first to be there in a way. And so, yeah, it's fantastic in that regard. And I think awareness is really key.
And isn't it really those firsts that make up most of our lives anyway? I feel like that's like 99% of my life are those kinds of things.
Yep.
Yeah. And why do they seem to fall to the background of our lives,
right,
instead of the foreground? And I was even thinking about, and when you guys were, I could everything about our kids and as they grow, but I've even kind of been challenged myself from the flip of that a little bit, in me needing to always be the first to offer them something good. So whether, and as they get older, I mean, I have, we both do. Or all three of us do have children kind of in a span, and I'm sure a lot of other people do too. But even if you don't have children, there's so much that we can do in the way of encouraging somebody to go to be first. But also, I feel a lot of times like I've got to offer the first and best advice. Like if there's a problem, I've got to tie it with a bow somehow, be the first one to do that. Or if one of them is down, I have to reach into the bag and find a way to set it right. And there's not always a way to do that. And I've just been asking myself kind of why do you always need to do that? Because that's not always a genuine inspired first. I think that's kind of a self-imposed pressure or a pride. I don't really know, haven't really unearthed all of that, but there's so many ways of pressuring others to be first, but also pressuring ourselves to be first. And yeah. So Crystal, you were talking about, and we can kind of bridge a little bit to the hidden firsts, the first that we're talking about, and how we can find those more meaningful things proactively in an intentional way. So if we were kind of going through all these questions, which I wish that we could, we would be on a ride, if you will, from kind of the outward to the inward, and then into application, with our life, with our real way of finding some things that are hidden firsts, and ways to do that. And I had this great story last night that I can kind of launch into about the specifics of what I mean by application. As we got to the end of the questions, we talked about identifying a few meaningful ways, or learning to notice or appreciate what are some things that we can do to be more intentional about valuing first. And my husband has this wonderful, I was asking him this question. First of all, he didn't read the essay, but he said he was sure it was great. but I'm not so convinced. But he did have this wonderful answer to this question that I asked him about making hidden first more meaningful and practicing that with intentionality. And he said, well, I like to be the first one to wish people happy birthday. And I started thinking about that because he is better than anyone I know on the planet at wishing people. Like if he knew Jennifer's birthday and Crystal's birthday, he would call you on your birthday. And if I had a dime for every person that said, oh, it's just not my birthday until Tom calls me. And I never really think about it because I've known him for so long. It's just his thing that he does is people's birthdays. But he was saying, I really like to be the first one to wish happy birthday. And then he shared the way he does that is he said, I just keep it in my phone. I just have in all my contacts where their birthday is. And then I have it set up so that it pops up for me on their birthday. And I thought that's such a simple thing. And probably lots of people do that, but it really is a way to be intentional about being first in a meaningful, lasting kind of legacy way. So what are your thoughts on all that?
Well, I'm just thinking, I mean, about that specifically. It's such such a simple act,
Right.
but shows so much care, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think as moms, we have lots of opportunities for things like that where we can make someone's day with something that probably didn't take us too much time or effort, but just kind of intentionality. Like that's what I'm noticing about what Tom does, that it's very intentional.
Yeah, and I agree. I think intentionality is the key. And you use the word paying attention, or that phrase, I should say. And it really, I think the more awake that we are to those hidden messages, to those things that just float by us, that are very intentional for somebody else, but it isn't necessarily something that we were looking for, the more awake we are to receiving them, then the more open we are to giving them. And it's like a great awakening. And I feel that in my house with my kids, or even my husband, sometimes the tiniest things can really boost an atmosphere, really just change the direction of the day. And it was so small, but it really did something. And to really view it as like a kiss from God, like a kiss from our Creator. I like some of the imagery that you use because you talk about floating on the wind like dandelion seeds, twirling helicopter seeds. Like if we are awake enough to looking around at everything that in our homes and outside and everything that God has put here for us, and see them as little gifts, little hidden secrets straight to us, I think it produces in us an awareness that, and then we can give it out more and just kind of share it and spread it. And it's going to be like a chain reaction. There'll be more and more response. And if we create our families to be the same way, then we're just going to have a generation of people that are aware that firsts encompass many things and can really change the day for someone else, including ourselves.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what you wrote about, Kim, a few weeks ago about noticing, that noticing challenge that you did. I thought I loved that. And I feel like it's helped me just be more intentional about paying attention to what I'm seeing, like just small things that I'm seeing on a daily basis. So I feel like that first step is so helpful in this kind of progression of learning to find a new first.
Yeah, definitely. So what do you think when you're in, okay, so let's just real time. So Crystal, what you said, and as an example, and Jennifer too, with your in your homes, right where we live. It could be in our homes, in our workspace. We have, one of the things I was thinking when I heard both of you saying was about positivity and negativity, and the way to just look around us and with intentionality do those things. But what would that look like for you? So I don't know, maybe it's your husband or one of your kids is having a really hard time, or, you know, tell me, let's do a real time. Okay, what does that look like?
Sure.
Sorry, I'm just removing this little thing. Okay, go ahead. We're almost at the end of our time, so we can just kind of wrap it.
I'll keep it brief, but I think to be, when we see that kind of unraveling, to be the first to become aware and somehow stop that. That's what I'm trying to just say, like, wait a minute, something is happening here. There's a lot going on, and how can I kind of catch the wind, catch the wave of this? And it could be, we can't maybe solve it, like you mentioned earlier, Kim. Like, we want to package these things and give them out when we see distress or concerns. But maybe it's just saying, here's some tea, here's some coffee. Like, that's a very real thing in our family. Like, we respond to hot liquids. And
I love it. Oh, that's so good.
Or let me take the trash out for you. Or, like, I can see you're really struggling today. Let me take something off of your load for today. Or then and then offer an ear, not that it may be received at that time, but this is something I feel like I do all the time. I have 2 kids in puberty. And so, like, it's constantly like, if you want to talk, I'm here. And I don't have to say anything, but I'll just listen, but just to be the person who kind of enters in. And depending on my kids, sometimes it's going to have to be a really light touch, which would be coffee or tea or something. Only the oldest one, my adult child, the 20-year-old, drinks coffee. The other ones do tea. But something soft. And maybe it'll bridge its way into something more intense, but just kind of being the catalyst to de-escalate.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I like that. That's an invitation that's really easy to say yes to, and can be a bridge to more.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. I was just thinking about my daughter in particular, who's very extroverted, and she's really struggling right now. So I've just been noticing that, and I feel like the Lord is planting these little seeds, like, oh, you need to reach out, and here you could do this thing or that thing, or you could say no to this thing on your to-do list and say yes to something with her instead.
So good.
That is so good. Wow. Oh, I have all these gold nuggets to write down and practice. Oh, wow. I hope this is, I hope we can do this again, to be continued, but I just love the way that we learn from each other in this way, and you guys have really given me some really important things to think about about being first. So super grateful for that, and I look forward to our next time.
So wasn't that amazing? I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did being a part of it. And there are many more conversations on the Chaise to come, so you could be a part of it too. If you would like to be a part of one of these conversations, then leave your comment here or message me on Facebook or Instagram. We would love for you to be a part of a conversation on the Chaise.